impact your trial here. Okay, we'll be all right. We're live. Yeah, I got you. Will you just slide into that chair? Yeah, it's over. Let me okay, you guys ready to do this?
Yeah.
All right. I think I'll go line up in order. So whoever's at the car end. Yeah.
Oh, sure. I forgot to put on my gesture.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah.
All rise. The Honorable Justices of the ICC now presiding. Thank you, being guys want to be seated. All right, Fernando, if you'll then have the prosecution begin, they can start with their oral arguments.
Okay, please record. My name is Hirohito, along with my partner, Indigo Lade. We are here today representing the people in the trial of Hirohito and we are the prosecution. Hirohito is most likely guilty of crime against humanity for four main reasons that we have found. First, he went to great lengths to keep his status in crime, basically. That defended he had much power and influence over the military, like them do other things for him. Third, he allowed his military and people to go out and do brutally terrifying things to other countries. And lastly, he didn't take injustice against what these people were doing.
For our first point, like other British leaders, Hirohito refused to surrender because it was the way of the warrior and it caused 1,000 people to die. Think about it like this. Most people, if you were asked, what would you do if your country was suffering during a war, they'd probably stop and go help their people. But instead, Hirohito just like bomb Pearl Harbor to force the US into neutralization and just let his people continue on suffering. This didn't even help because a few years later, the US just like bombed Pearl Harbor, so like his population was suffering even more afterward. And the imperial government wanted to be allowed, like didn't take any criticism about this at all. And like they didn't submit anything like when it came to matters of Asia. Effectively having like thousands of people dying because of his pride and Hirohito didn't allow his soldiers to surrender. This also leads to our second point, Hirohito having much power and influence over the military. Hirohito was initially a commanding officer with all powerful and imperial constitution adopted by his grandfather, Emperor Meiji, saying that the emperor has supreme power and command of the army and the navy because the emperor was leader of the imperial general headquarters. Even before the events of World War II, Japanese armies were invading countries such as Manchuria and Vietnam and committing horrible crimes during the invasions. This really shows how.
I'm gonna pause you. Sorry, justices, are you guys okay? Okay.
I wanted to add something which is you said eventually, so when is eventually?
Wait,
Earlier you said eventually gain power or the military.
What really was his reasoning to bomb Pearl Harbor? Because you keep mentioning Pearl Harbor, so.
oh yeah, sorry. I don't think I like really stated that. Basically, it was just to push like the U.S. into neutralization, so like, they couldn't really like hurt Japan and.
Make sure you're speaking up. I want to be able to hear it on the YouTube video.
And like they also were scared of the U.S. like stopping their other military plans of invading other countries.
Was it really sure? So that caused
was planning out the attack on Pearl Harbor, or was it someone else that had control of the military?
Well, so yeah, there was a general, but since Hirohito is like the emperor with all the power, he did like execute these commands, so like he did allow it to happen.
Like basically continuing to answer the question, Hirohito might not have been the one with the idea, but he still had, like Indigo said, much power over the military. So his generals and himself basically are responsible. Because by saying that he's responsible, it's not necessarily saying that other people like the generals are not responsible. So,
So I feel like I'm hearing like two different things. Because this might have just been my hearing, but I thought I heard you say the US bombed Pearl Harbor, and then you're saying the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Sorry, that was.
And I'm also hearing you saying that Hirohito did not surrender because it was the way of the war, and then you said they did surrender. So I just don't know. What are the points here?
Oh yeah, so like I think like we're gonna like work on like our next point about him not surrendering, but he did later on. I'm on.
So you say that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor to push America to be neutral, but I'm pretty sure that America was already neutral and that this event actually pushed them to join the war. Correct. That they did that basically to say, hey, we don't want you to join the war, so we're gonna like try and keep you out of the war. But that completely backfired. Because if you're gonna bomb someone, they're gonna like join the war and attack you. Yeah.
You also, at the beginning, you said that he was making his people suffer by focusing so much on the military, but what was he doing or not doing to make his people suffer?
We'll get to that in a further point.
So for example, with him having a lot of like power and influence, there was like an imperial constitution which gave him a lot of this power. And people like if you like do some like research about Hirohito, some people say like he really had no power and was tricked by the military. But this really isn't true because like Hirohito was pretty intelligent, and again he did have all the power. And Japan was like harshly invading other countries like Vietnam and Korea, like the way Japan. And this wasn't like these weren't like one-time things. There's also like the second Sino-Japanese War, and he seemed to provoke this kind of chaos, like the attack on Pearl Harbor, and he did treat his soldiers poorly. So like he kind of were forced into this.
Was Hirohito directly responsible for the events that were happening at 19 before World War II?
That could be debated. Because some might say that it was his soldiers just deciding to do it. Some would say it's his generals that allowed the soldiers to do it. Or some would say that it's Hirohito that allowed the soldiers to do it. I think it's somewhat all of them. So like,
So could we have the same debate about Pearl Harbor, because the generals could decide to attack China, and they also decide to bomb Pearl Harbor?
But then like the king does actually like I don't know if we're gonna kind of verify that they're like allowed to do that.
One of the people that had a lot of power in the military was Hirohito. And when Emperor Hirohito said, Emperor Hirohito never said that they couldn't attack places like Pearl Harbor, and after that, Hirohito would just go attack these places and organize
we're going to someone go on that and another.
Okay, so according to like a Word document, it was Joseph.com, a soldier explained how the emperor would treat like the soldiers poorly, and they basically just sent them to the king, so they didn't really have a choice in doing things most of the time. And here he goes.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit louder? I'm trying to follow, but I'm struggling.
So basically, in a Word document, like a soldier explained how they're just basically told to the emperor.
You know, you keep going, and I was going to talk to the justices.
And here he was able to have his armies do like terrible things to people. Some of those being like Chinese men and beheading contests and even eating people.
This leads us into probably our most traumatizing argument, mostly focused on the River Nanking. And it's that he didn't really prevent his soldiers and armies from doing terrible things. So there's actually a book about this, and there's an extra comment, which is during River Nanking, Chinese men were used for bayonet practice and decapitation contests, like George said in the last one. But then also 20 to 80,000 Chinese women were raped and disemboweled.
You said how Hirohito did not stop events from happening that kind of thing, but why would it be his fault that these occurring? Just because he has like control over the soldiers, why does it mean that he has to stop them?
Well, I kind of thought about this as like a parent and a child. So if the child did something wrong, the parent is still somewhat responsible for it. Or,
And I do agree with that, but the keyword there is somewhat, because it was mostly the child's fault for deciding to do that. And I feel like it's not really a child-parent relationship, because, like, a parent has a little more, I feel like, control over everything that a child does, but Hirohito did not control every single soldier in their actions.
true, so that was, like you said, not exactly what it was, but like, I feel like Hirohito is still responsible for what his armies did. Like, his armies might also be guilty, but Hirohito being the owner of them, probably also.
And would that be the same as like saying that our president is responsible for people that like go out and rob banks and stuff, and it's his fault that there's crime in the US?
That is time. Thank you very much. Let's take a minute and chat with your table partner about the arguments presented. Ready? Perfect.
Acted against it, like condition of happening to make treaties with the other countries. And also with World War II, it was discussed the absent and also the Great Connection. And after, like immediately after the World War Prohibition.
Just as a
Yeah, so the prohibition immediately.
When they made alcohol legal, you could no longer control the manufacturing itself.
What they were doing was
Speak up if you would.
Well, they can see in their face.
May it please the court, my name is Aaron Hobson, along with my partner Tony Starks. We are here today to represent Emperor Hirohito, the defendant in this case. First, Hirohito kept the government stable to prevent other government officials from taking advantage of it. And second, he was strongly against World War II and the Second Sino-Japanese. Question. So when he came to power, the government was in turmoil, and he tried to prevent like it collapsing under this turmoil, I guess. To my first point, Hirohito wanted to surrender to World War II from the start and just didn't agree with the war in the first place. Additionally, I'm sorry, this is messed up.
It's fine.
He made changes to it. I don't know what happened. Can I go back real quick and check on it?
The timer is gonna continue to run. I mean, it's up to you if you wanna use that time to fix it.
Because I don't see where he made changes to it. I don't know where he made it.
Okay, so you wanted to surrender. Can you explain what you mean when you wanted to surrender? And the justices have questions as well.
Cooper.
So I think you mentioned something about like a war in Japan.
The Sino-Japanese War.
Yeah, it might be a dumb question, but what really was that?
It was basically, I haven't done too much research on it, but it was basically a war before World War II started, and he was against it because it was hurting a lot of his people, and there was just no point in having it in the first place. Amar.
So if he was really against the war from the beginning, then why didn't he like punish the generals that executed the Pearl Harbor attack and the rape of Nanking?
Well, because he definitely had power because he was the emperor, but also when you have a group of intelligent generals, it's going to be easy to fall under that trap of I should just agree with them because there's a group of people saying you should do this, and you're the only person saying you shouldn't. You're usually going to follow the people that say you should. Also, after the war, he said the rape of Nanking in World War II. He was disgusted by the facts of like what they did to people and regretted what he did too. Naomi.
So, you made a point that was like, he wanted the war, he wanted to surrender like from the very start of it. Like, I know you're gonna get into that, but I remember reading a quote or something that said like, Japan was gonna like fight till the very end of the war. I don't remember where I found that, but I reported it. And that's why they didn't surrender. Like even when their troops were like really low, there was like a 1% chance of them winning the war. And that they were still gonna fight it out. Like why did they surrender that?
Well, it was probably more of the generals' like opinion on that because really the generals are probably gonna have more thought into it. Like Hirohito's worried about other stuff inside his country, not just the war as well. Also, like attacking to the end, I guess that's a tradition for them. And were you gonna say something else?
No, if you finish.
Yeah, or that's it.
If Hirohito was worried for his own country more than the war itself, why did he only surrender after the second nuclear bomb was dropped on Japan and not the first one?
Well, probably, like I said, and this is gonna sound lazy because I'm gonna use this a lot, but it seriously is like a big point. The generals probably pressured him into keeping them in the war, trying to attack and defend against other countries.
So if I'm interpreting this correctly, most of the actions that he's being accused of are because of peer pressure.
I would say so, yes.
So sort of like Mr. Stark's point in the Hitler trial, you're saying that he basically engaged in war out of self-defense because he just wanted to protect his own country?
I would say so, yes. And also, it wasn't like Hitler where he had other generals pressuring into, like it was basically Hitler's thought into putting it into the war. Hirohito didn't really have much opinion on the war, like should we attack, should we defend, and what should we do?
So now you're mentioning Hitler. I was wondering just now, why did he join the Axis powers if he really didn't want to engage in war? Why did he sign anything to protect others if they were?
I would say at the point where they were, it was kind of hard for Japan just to leave the war. They were in it, and at the time, Hitler was probably the powerhouse in the war, and he was probably looking out for his people, knowing they would probably be protected, and it would be the best option for them to be with Hitler.
Second.
Sure. Additionally, this leads me to my third point. During the Second World War, Hirohito had, like I said, little power over the military. So even if he did the rape of Nanking, you can't blame all of it on him because he had no power. He had little power over what people did to other countries, like generals and his own military, like soldiers. So I'm saying,
As Hirohito is the president of Japan, why wouldn't he have total control over this country?
well, he has total power, but it's not like if you are pressured into something, even if you have total power, it can be easy just to give power to others without knowing it. Amar.
So I understand that like in the moment the generals are gonna attack and he didn't wanna like really stop them, but why didn't he punish the generals afterwards if he like really didn't wanna be in the war?
I'm not sure if he did or didn't, but if he didn't, I'd probably say because he might be scared to.
If he didn't like punish the generals or anything, and like they were basically controlling the war, like you're saying, shouldn't he like stand up against it, like a strong leader really should, and like say that this is bad and that they're treating their people, mostly their soldiers, really bad.
And that's exactly what he did. Like even before he died, he acted against. Like after the war, he said they shouldn't have done that, and that the rape of Nanking, World War II, their acts were just terrible, and they shouldn't have done that, and that what the generals did and their soldiers is terrible.
But did they like did he end up punishing any of the soldiers or the generals though?
I'm pretty sure. No,
I'm not sure if this relates to anything, but how did he die? Did he like commit suicide like Hitler?
no, it was just old age and disease.
Did his like
Natural causes.
did his empire like live on? Did he after the war? Did he still continue to rule?
Yes, he did.
So I think you asked me.
This isn't like trying to contradict your argument, but the soldiers that were responsible for like the Pearl Harbor and the Nanking, or like after World War II, they were executed at a trial.
Okay, I didn't research into that. I was learning more.
So this kind of goes into actions versus intentions because he's giving his intentions after the fact, after everything that he did and all the people he killed. Then he says that he regrets all of it. It doesn't really make too much sense from a leader standpoint to be saying that you didn't want to do any of it after you killed so many people already.
Well, even before the war, he did want to get into the war. He protested against the Sino-Japanese War and World War II, like getting involved with it.
How do you know it's not just like him saying that just so that his people like him a bit more, and like so that he looks better and can continue rolling on?
Well, because he was consistent through his thoughts throughout the war. Also, like if he really wanted to attack in that war, I feel like he would have done a lot more stuff with the power he had, like not just bombing Pearl Harbor, but maybe other like popular cities in other countries, and like he probably would have done more. And also, he was consistent with what he thought about the war.
Well, you were just saying earlier that he didn't have that much power over the army.
Well, I mean, Japan had power, but he didn't have power over what people did. But if he really wanted to get involved with the war, he could have done a lot more instead of just bombing Pearl Harbor or the rape of Nanking.
Thank you, Your Honors. Okay, I got you. So then at this time, we will now have the justices step out in the halls to deliberate. All rise. All rise. You may be seated. Thank you, sir. You guys want a handshake, say good job? I'm going to check in with the justices. Kayla, will you facilitate conversation? Who do you guys think that he's guilty or not guilty? Okay.
Aaron, I want your hand. Aaron panicked, so you're both fine. Yeah, but like, no, you were disagreeing. So maybe you both of you have.
No, it would have been arguing. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
Okay, but
I would have so much stuff.
okay, but like, I wear my kind of being anything.
Also, like, because think about like you're an island, I can kill people myself. So like you probably can't hurt you. But like you need to right? I stopped wearing my vocabulary.
You can go I think not guilty.
And then just like, naturally it's like, so I think
Yeah, what do you do? What do you do?
So he knows the only point is I want to argue here that was a lot of matches. He said time to go on with a lot less.
Class.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So I want Kayla to help facilitate the conversation so you guys can kind of talk through different perspectives. Okay?
So, what you guys? Sure. I don't think you can really control the soldiers' morals, so I think no matter what you tell them, they can still do what they do.
Back to your
Yes, sir.
Oh, that worked out right too.
Now we're alive.
Should we just like?
I-
keep
so-
it going?
We both thought that he was not guilty because, your all's argument, first of all, I couldn't really hear it.
Yeah. I was panicking. It's okay.
I don't want to be double mad at this time. I also thought they said some of the same points that Aaron did.
Personally, I know this is weird coming from defense, but I think he was completely guilty. He was almost, if not as terrible as Hitler during this war. Like, even during the acts, like, his soldiers made, he could have easily punished him for those acts. And also, he knew what was going on. He knew about the rape of 19. I just had to say, basically, he had no control over it. But he agreed with it and also knew that it was going on. I'm surprised you guys actually didn't say that.
Well, without.
Okay, I want to Hirohito personally ratified a law which would remove the constraints of international law, so the soldiers were allowed to treat the victims of the rape actions worse. So he clearly didn't know about that. But it was in like our third point, and we didn't get to that because stuff.
But, so it was out.
Let Kristen respond. No.
Maybe that's not the best way to facilitate the conversation.
Kristen, respond.
Already spoke. I was going to say something again.
No.
Hey, guys.
Alright, so I feel like because the rape of next was completely like against, like it was not what he intended for. They would.
I can agree with you. It wasn't
Because the original intent was just to take part of China, right? Because they were running out of resources, right? They needed the oil, or else because U.S. cut out supply lines. They needed the oil for resources.
They also opened.
Okay, they cut it off, bro.
They also opened.
No, they cut it off.
They also Hey,
Okay, so like, I feel like because the issue is the rape of Nanking was completely against original intentions, meaning that it was
not at all what was intended. It was just supposed to be like, the soldiers there are just supposed to like hold China, keep China part of Japan, right? But
Can I go?
and then the rate from Nanking was completely against the intentions.
Why do you encourage it?
So I think I sort of agree with Aaron. Like for all intents and purposes, Hirohito is guilty, but based on the cases presented,
Yeah.
he's not guilty.
Yeah.
But like if we're taking all the information we know, he should be guilty.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
But I feel like Aaron's side made a better argument.
Yeah, I can't believe
And
that.
I feel like the prosecution, they
They
never
never
really
did.
directly.
No, I don't care. I know I did horrible. I am not like an attorney just because of the fact I do that. I want to be an attorney. If I be an attorney, I thought my argument was kind of lazy. Because there was kind of no
research is the issue.
No, the problem was, I don't want to put Isaac under the bus, but he kind of like made changes to our.
I saw that,
Yeah, I
It
saw that.
really
Isaac
says
was talking
Isaac
about
got
it
those
yesterday.
changes. Also, the reason why he had no power over the military was completely his fault. He was shown as shy and reclusive. Like, if he really wanted to be involved with the military, he could have stand up for himself instead of just being shy and like. No, I'll let Lucas because he's.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah. Oh yeah, without the arguments, definitely he's guilty. But I feel like you gave the better argument than he did.
Yeah, it was one for. Yeah, you're
Also, the U.S. overnight pipelines.
Okay, Aaron, you're gonna win. But like, okay, but Christopher, why am I here? Even yes, but that also wasn't intended. But why do you encourage him? You could. But you like those personal ratifies like yeah, you ratify also the traits of international law.
What about after the first one?
I do like stuff. Let me do my stuff.
Hey, can I like say something?
August 5th, 1907. So like, I don't know.
Law-wise, I feel like he would be proven not guilty, even though I personally feel like he is.
Yeah, just like something me and Aaron were talking about just a second ago. Like they brought up in the justices in the trial brought up that he didn't surrender after the first atomic bomb, but
He
like,
didn't.
He did.
Oh.
so he
You're
actually
They're still talking, keep going.
so from my research he actually did surrender after the first one and then they dropped another one. So
And then not only was it the atomic bombs, right? So the Soviet Union was also invading Manchuria, right? I think Manchuria.
yeah.
So they didn't want to fight two fronts because you already have the U.S. on their butthole, right? And now they have the Soviet Union on their head. So you can't fight two fronts like that. Because Germany already tried it and they kind of got crushed.
That's the reason we found that they surrendered. They didn't surrender after either of the non-bombs. They only surrendered when Soviet surrendered.
Bro, I think I believe that. I didn't believe that.
Make sure say when you're talking.
Well, I guess
He had talked about it, but he didn't officially say to the U.S. that I surrendered. Like, he didn't come out and say it. He was like, I'm thinking about it, but like, he didn't officially come out and say, I surrender. You can have my territory. I just.
So I think it was like maybe August 7th or 8th where he said like the war can't go on any longer, but it wasn't until the 14th or something that it actually like he started signing the papers to like formally give up. So figure starts.
Can I go real quick? Sorry. So just two things I think are the deciding factors for me when you're thinking about this case is you have to ask yourself, number one, were crimes against humanity committed? I don't know if either of you guys tried to establish that there were or there weren't. You guys mentioned Pearl Harbor, you guys mentioned the rape of Nanking, but you guys never mentioned the Rome Statute or like whether or not these broke the Rome Statute and were clearly violations of that. You never mentioned these were, I think you guys all got to question number 2. You guys were kind of assuming crimes against humanity were committed, and then you guys got to question number 2, is Hirohito at fault for these or not? And that's really where you guys surrounded the entire trial. you failed to mention that it's a constitutional monarchy and that the emperor actually is the head of state, not the head of government.
Huh?
And
Wait,
so it does not have any
guys,
real
wait,
authority within the government structure. And then you guys didn't like,
no, but I think, I don't know where I saw this, but I think, before World War II, it was more constitutional. And then like in World War II, it was like transitioning into the absolute, which means that he did have a lot more power. And there was
even
more
in that
money
argument, you're
involved.
being incredibly vague of like, it was around these times that things started to change. If you're gonna convince a justice, you have to say like events and like prove it with evidence and say, at this time it shifted from here to now being here, and now you're seeing this massive change. So I need those specifics. Otherwise, you're just saying like wishy-washy statements that the justices are just gonna be like, yeah, go over.
So I feel like that, I don't think Japan violated any war crimes. The bombing of Pearl Harbor, like, if you were to condemn the bombing of Pearl Harbor to be like a war crime, any bombing of a military base would be considered a war crime, right?
You guys ready?
Yes.
Where are you going? Wait, Aaron, where are you going? You're right. Oh, wait, bro.
Aaron, what happened?
Let me get it.
Aaron.
I see it all. Can I see an outline for
What?
us? I can't help her. Back here. Here. And that's not even our outline.
It's guilty, right?
It
Or
has
it's not guilty, it's gonna be not guilty.
It's gonna be guilty because no, it's gonna be not guilty because you made a better case. I don't think you can Here's the problem though. I find it.
All rise. You guys walked in the wrong order.
Sorry. Not guilty.
Bang the gavel. You have to bang the gavel. There you go. Now you're supposed to clap. All right. All right. So you